I don't think we should ever accept that in golf.
I don't think we should ever accept that in golf. Rory McIlroy's words echoed with quiet fury, slicing through the polite veneer of a sport built on composure. The 2025 Ryder Cup at Bethpage Black was supposed to be a celebration, electric, passionate, a display of skill and unity. Instead, it became something darker. A single moment, small and almost absurd in isolation, would rattle the soul of golf itself. Fans arrived expecting cheers and rivalry. They left talking about chaos and shame. It wasn't a controversial ruling or a blown putt that broke the game's code. It was a plastic cup. In a sport obsessed with order, the unthinkable had happened. The gallery turned hostile, and golf's gentlemanly image fractured before the world's eyes. This wasn't just noise in the background anymore. This was a breach of everything the game claimed to stand for. It happened midway through Saturday's four-ball. Rory McIlroy and Shane Lowry were grinding to protect Europe's lead, when, out of nowhere, something flew from the crowd, a spinning blur of amber and plastic cutting across the autumn sun. It struck the brim of Erica McIlroy's hat just enough to make her flinch, just enough to silence thousands. For a split second, time froze. The gasp of the gallery, the stunned look on her face, the disbelief of the players. It all fused into one surreal moment. It wasn't about injury. It was about disrespect. Golf's sacred space, where fans were once custodians of tradition, had turned into an arena of recklessness. Within minutes, cameras replayed it in slow motion. What had been a contest of nations became a cultural shockwave. 15 seconds. That's all it took for the Ryder Cup to turn from spectacle to scandal. Social media did what it always does. It amplified. Within hours, the clip was everywhere. Hashtags exploded, comment sections ignited, and the conversation shifted from birdies to boundaries. Broadcasters froze the frame on Erica's startled reaction. TikToks looped the toss in slow motion. Memes flooded the internet labeling it the Bethpage throw. The golf itself, the shots, the strategy, the tension, faded into background noise. The only thing people wanted to see was the moment decency was shattered. Was it an accident? Was it a taunt? None of it mattered anymore. What mattered was perception. A family member had been struck, and the image burned itself into public consciousness. In a sport defined by silence and respect, the noise of outrage became deafening. When Rory McIlroy finally addressed the chaos, his composure masked something deeper, a restrained, simmering anger that revealed just how much the moment had cut him. Speaking to reporters, he thanked the respectful fans, but his message was aimed squarely at the rest. This wasn't passion, he said. This was abuse. His tone was steady, his delivery measured, but his eyes betrayed frustration. For years, McIlroy had been golf's diplomat, unflappable, professional, always the model of restraint. But not that week. The insult wasn't about competition. It was about family. There's passion, he reminded everyone, and then there's crossing the line. Those words carried weight beyond the press room. They were a warning that if golf didn't protect its own values, it might lose the very soul that made it different. The beer toss was just the spark. Behind it was a week-long storm brewing under the surface. European players spoke openly afterward. Shane Lowry, Tyrrell Hatton, Victor Hovland, each admitting the crowd had crossed limits they'd never seen before. Taunts during backswings, slurs from the ropes, even families being dragged into the hostility. For many, the Ryder Cup had always been fiery, but this was something else. Luke Donald, Europe's captain, rarely emotional, spoke with uncharacteristic steel. Players' families are off limits. That line summed it up. Golf had always prided itself on sportsmanship, on a shared code of respect. But Bethpage broke that illusion. The same intensity that made the event thrilling had curdled into something meaner, a reminder that unchecked passion can quickly turn toxic. By nightfall, the story had escaped golf entirely. ESPN debated it, Sky Sports replayed it, and Golf Digest broke it down frame by frame like a crime scene. Headlines didn't talk about scores or comebacks. They talked about crowd control, alcohol, and entitlement. The Bethpage throw had become a cultural talking point. Commentators split into factions. Some dismissed it as harmless rowdiness, while others declared it a disgrace that stained the tournament's legacy. Even sponsors started calling organizers privately, nervous about the optics of associating with chaos. In a sport that sells itself on luxury and composure, this was brand damage on live TV. Bethpage had revealed an uncomfortable truth: that golf, too, could lose control. As the dust settled, organizers scrambled for answers. The PGA of America and Ryder Cup committees issued statements promising reviews, reforms, and stricter rules. Security presence would increase, alcohol policies would tighten. Every inch of crowd behavior was under scrutiny. The European camp made it clear: this could never happen again. Plans for the 2027 Cup in Europe were already shifting toward a zero-tolerance policy. And quietly, American officials faced pressure, not from fans, but from sponsors and networks, to prove that golf's biggest stage could still uphold its values. The beer toss was a wake-up call, one that forced the sport to look at itself in the mirror. While administrators drafted policy changes, Rory and Erica were left with something no press release could fix: the personal sting of being at the center of it all. Cameras captured Rory's jaw set in quiet defiance, his smiles forced, his tone somber, even as Europe celebrated victory. Erica stayed composed, her calm demeanor contrasting the chaos around her. But the damage was done. Their private moment, one of shock, fear, and disbelief, had been broadcast across the world. For a sport obsessed with control, this was raw humanity exposed. Behind the headlines and memes, the McIlroys became symbols of how easily boundaries blur when the roar of the crowd becomes a weapon. Years from now, when fans talk about the 2025 Ryder Cup, they won't recall the clutch putts or the heroic comebacks. They'll remember the noise, the scandal, the cup that flew. Bethpage will live on as the moment golf's mask slipped, when respect collided with rage and the sport's image cracked under the weight of its own tradition. Some will argue it was an overreaction. Others will call it a reckoning. But what can't be denied is that it changed something fundamental. It forced golf to ask uncomfortable questions about fans, about fairness, about where the line truly lies between passion and poison. In the aftermath, Rory's closing words lingered like a final echo. We all know the difference between passion and abuse. The beer toss at Bethpage wasn't just an act of disrespect. It was a mirror reflecting what golf risks becoming if it loses its balance. The sport that built its reputation on silence and grace now faces a louder, more volatile world. Whether it evolves or retreats will define its future. For Rory and Erica, for the players and fans who still believe in golf's integrity, the hope is simple: that this dark chapter becomes a lesson, not a pattern. Because in a game built on honor, sometimes the loudest statement is the one that says, "Enough."